On January 24th, 2008, the BCCI held an auction, not for cricketers, but an auction for the teams. Mukesh Ambani's Reliance Industries bought the most expensive IPL franchisee and based it in Mumbai. Vijay Mallya's United Breweries Group bought the next expensive one. They were based out of Bengaluru. There were 8 teams in all. Less than 3 months later, Royal Challengers Bangalore hosted Kolkata Knight Riders for the tournament opener, first ever IPL match. The Chinnaswamy Stadium had a packed house that night. It had been full before, but this was different from the matches featuring India or from a Ranji match involving the home team Karnataka. The first IPL fans had come to watch a cricket match between two sides that did not exist 3 months ago. Neither side had any history or legacy. This fan base was created before a single ball had been bowled. Over time, this fan base has only grown. Ticket sales for matches used to be the most important source of revenue for cricket boards and organizers. The more the matches, the more the revenue, the more the money for the cricketers. Since the cricket season used to be limited, the cricketers were often expected to play without taking a break during the season. The career path of a cricketer was thus defined. Cricketers were selected by clubs. At club level, there was often little or no money in most countries. If they played well, the state or county side selected them. In countries like England, you could sustain yourself as a professional cricketer. If you were good, your contract got renewed. If you played for long enough, you got a benefit match. But to lead that life, to get that financial security, the cricketers had to play without a break. Let us see what that meant. Len Hutton was the first professional cricketer to lead England in Test cricket. In the summer of 1939, Hutton played 33 three-day first-class matches in 4 months before the Second World War began. That is 99 full days of scheduled cricket in 16 weeks. More than 6 days a week. Add to that the travel time. There were hardly any flights back then. In 1956, Jim Laker set a world record by taking 19 wickets in a test match in Old Trafford. After the match, he drove from Manchester, halted for dinner at Lichfield, and finally reached Euston in London. About 5 hours today. It would have been much, much longer back then. Laker played for Surrey the next morning at the Oval. Laker's world record stands even today, but it did not earn him even 1 day's break. But that was in England. In countries like India, professional cricket did not pay enough. Cricketers had to take up day jobs for sustenance. There was inter-office cricket. Organizations hired cricketers to play for them. Test cricketers were common in office tournaments like the Times Shield in Mumbai, because even Test cricket did not pay enough. All this meant that for a very long time, cricketers around the world did not get paid enough. The cricketers had no choice but to take up these jobs because cricket largely followed one structure: club, state, Test cricket, a geographical hierarchy. You played for a small area, qualified for a larger area. You kept doing this until you played for the country, and that was the peak of your income. Then, in the 1970s, an Australian media tycoon called Kerry Packer invited top cricketers from Australia, West Indies, Pakistan, England, and South Africa to play in his private league, the World Series Cricket. Over time, some of the best cricketers left for Kerry Packer. Some boards even banned their cricketers, but that did not change the cricketers' minds. This made two things obvious. The cricketers were not being paid enough money by their boards, and if someone did pay them enough money, many cricketers would give up Test cricket. The World Series stopped in 2 years, but something else happened. Test playing nations had boycotted South Africa for 2 decades, from the early 1970s to the early 1990s. Dr. Ali Bakr was a former South Africa captain. In the 1980s, he approached the best cricketers from England, Sri Lanka, the West Indies, and Australia to tour South Africa. The boards banned the cricketers. Some of them even got life bans, but the cricketers were willing to accept that. They were even to accept the stigma of being called racist. Once again, it became clear that there were cricketers who would choose money over Test cricket. Let us now turn to India. Until the early 1990s, the BCCI made no revenue from live cricket matches. They sometimes even paid Doordarshan, the national television channel. That changed in the first half of the 1990s. In 1996, the BCCI made enormous profit by selling the rights of the World Cup to WorldTel. Around this time, Lalit Modi pitched the idea of a cricket league to the BCCI. a city-based league with privately owned teams, mostly Indian cricketers but overseas players as well. Cricket every evening for 4 to 6 weeks a year. The original IPL but in 50-over format. The BCCI rejected the idea at that point. Over the next decade, established themselves firmly as the richest board in the world. In 2007, Indian media tycoon Subhash Chandra did what Packer had done 30 years ago. He launched the Indian Cricket League. He owned both the league and the team. The matches were played in T2020 format, but the rest was very similar to what Lalit Modi had thought. Teams named after cities, overseas cricketers, evening matches, everything televised live. The BCCI banned the Indian cricketers who signed up for the ICL. They made things as difficult for the ICL as possible. But they also realized that the uncapped Indian cricketers were underpaid. Once the ICL IPL dust settled, the BCCI raised the Ranji Trophy daily allowances from 16,000 rupees to 35,000 rupees. It was similar to the impact Kerry Packer had created. Until Packer, the England cricketers were earning £210 per test match. The board raised it to £1,000 after Packer. For now, the BCCI launched their own league, the Indian Premier League. Subhash Chandra had done everything right, but there was one problem. In fact, India does not watch all Indian cricketers. Had India done that, the TRP for domestic cricket would have skyrocketed. As Lalit Modi figured out and Subhash Chandra didn't, India watched not just Indian cricketers but the big stars. Tendulkar, Ganguly, Dravid, Dhoni, Sehwag, Yuvraj, Kumble, Harbhajan, Zaheer. Subhash Chandra had everything but not them. No Indian stars, the ICL fell apart. The IPL, meanwhile, went from strength to strength. The money was so enormous that over time, several cricketers had no problem in giving up international duty when there was a clash. But really, how much money are we talking about? In Kerry Packer's era, Greg Chappell and Dennis Tilley were paid 35,000 Australian dollars each. That is about 173,000 Australian dollars in 2023 or 115,000 US dollars. Andrew Simons was paid 1.35 million US dollars in 2008, about 1.89 million US dollars in 2023. If we adjust for inflation, Simons was paid 16.4 times what Chappell and Lilly were paid. The IPL had not merely raised the bar, it raised it beyond the scope of anyone else. Unlike Kerry Packer, unlike Ali Bakha, unlike Subhash Chandra, this time the cricketers had no board to fear if they played. No cricketer faced a ban if they played in the IPL. One country to initially resist the IPL was England. The early parts of their cricket season clashed with the league. Moreover, their cricketers had another source of income. Just after the first season of the IPL, an American billionaire called Alan Stanford landed in Lords in a black helicopter with 20 million US dollars in cash. Stanford had already announced an annual match between England and the West Indies, a T20 match. This was for a winner-takes-all 20 million US dollars prize money. The amount helped England buy some time, but not for long. Stanford was arrested after he was found guilty of running a massive Ponzi scheme. He is in prison now. In 2009, the ECB finally relented and allowed the cricketers to play in the IPL for 21 days. This was great for the IPL too, because Pakistan cricketers were now off limits after the Mumbai terrorist attack November 26, 2008. The IPL now grew at an absurd scale. Until the IPL, only 2% of the BCCI's revenue from broadcasting rights came from non-international cricket. That became 71% in 2017, less than a decade after the start of the IPL. Other boards noticed this absurd growth. They obviously tried to replicate the IPL, the Big Bash League in Australia, Caribbean Premier League, the Pakistan Super League, the Bangladesh Super League, the Lanka Premier League, and many others followed. Here, the BCCI played another card. India is a country of 1.4 billion people. Cricket is the most followed sport in the country. That makes India the largest cricket fan base in the world by some distance. Every board wanted to get the Indian fan base hooked to their own league. As we discussed, the Indian fans like to watch only the big Indian stars. That was mainly why the ICL failed. The BCCI now barred Indian cricketers from participating in 2020 leagues outside India. They could play other formats as much as they wanted to, but not T20. By depriving the rest of the world of the world's largest cricket fan base, the BCCI ensured that the IPL had no competitor in terms of eyeballs. The results showed. The BBL lost £17.5 million over the first 5 years. From 61 matches, they are set to return to a 43-match tournament. The PSL made money in their first 3 years, but their franchisees suffered losses. The Mozambique Super League shut down. But some leagues remained despite suffering losses, and the cricketers made the most of these and became freelancers. The concept of a league featuring overseas freelance cricketers is not new to cricket. The Lancashire League dates back to 1892. Cricketers from many countries have featured in the league, but they typically spent an entire season playing in the same league. Travel was not easy, and the English summer lasted for months. In the 21st century, cricketers realized that they could earn way more by just playing in leagues. Spending a month or two in a country would allow them to play in as many as 4 or 5 leagues in a year. Their international cricket contracts would not be of comparable value. Geopolitical hierarchy of cricket was ripped apart. No longer was international cricket the highest paid level. The club, state, country route was not mandatory anymore. Scouts could spot you in your own country's league. Once they did, you played in a second league. Once you made a name there, a third league would notice. You became a roving professional cricketer. This was great in many ways. More cricketers were now making more money than before. Players from weaker cricketing nations could now be noticed at international level. Had he been born 20 years ago, Rashid Khan would almost certainly have spent his career playing only for Afghanistan and would have perhaps had to take a day job. He still remains an Afghan cricketer, their greatest ever star, also one of the most sought after cricketers in the world. Franchisee leagues have made him that. At the same time, the leagues have pulled players away from international cricket. Every passing year makes it obvious that the ICC FTP needs to find windows for major franchisee leagues. The shift feels unusual because cricket has followed the geopolitical hierarchy since the 19th century. While this is a deviation from how cricket has been like for a century and a half, there is little doubt that this is the future of cricket. However, that is not the only change cricket has witnessed since the rise of the IPL. Other than India, Australia and England, full members began to realize that hosting a franchisee-based league was more convenient to hosting international cricket. Hosting another nation for 5 or 6 matches was not going to earn sufficient revenue unless the touring team was India. Every team wanted India to tour for international matches. That would guarantee crowd and television revenue. The BCCI realized how much money the Indian team contributed to cricket. They tried to make the most of it. In 2014, they joined hands with the CA and the ECB to put forward a proposal. They insisted on revenue proportionate to contributions, while the ECB wanted 4.4% and the CA 2.7%. The BCCI demanded 20.3% of the ICC's revenue share. The ICC proposed a different model for the 2016 to 2023 cycle. The BCCI did not get what they had asked for, but they still got more than the others. By then, something else had happened. IPL ran for 2 months a year. The teams made little money in the other 10 months. The Kolkata Knight Riders realized this. They realized the fact that they were left with limited income for the rest of the year. They turned to other leagues. In 2015, they bought the Trinidad and Tobago Red Steel in the CPL and renamed it to the Trinbago Knight Riders. Today, the Rajasthan Royals own the Barbados team, while the Punjab Kings have acquired the St. Lucia side. When the inaugural SA20 was launched, IPL franchises acquired all 6 teams. They also own 3 of the 16 IL T20 in the UAE and 3 of 6 in Major League Cricket in the USA. There is no official window for the IPL yet, but very little international cricket takes place during the league. If there is a clash, cricketers often choose the IPL. The IPL window seems inevitable, but the league is unlikely to stop there. The franchises have already found ways to make money for the rest of the year. The sheer volume of IPL's worth was fully understood in 2022 when the media rights for the next 5 years were announced. At $13 million a match, the IPL is now the second most expensive league in the world after the National Football League in the US. It has left the English Premier League behind. Cricket has never financially competed with other sports in such a way.